You're listening to Brayzen Bookwyrm's Unrighteous Reading Rebellion, a reformed book snob's journey and musings through all things romance. Some language may not be safe for all ears. Frequent use of sarcasm may occur. So we're back for lkerSisters book club. And I'm so excited. So we have Sarah Bale here with us. And I've been kind of looking forward to this for a while. I waited until the latest duet was complete. We wanted to wait till that because Sarah has a way. Of course, now the dog comes down and starts to bark at nothing inside. Thanks, Maggie. Sarah has a way of tearing your heart out and then fixing it ish. But I have the books that we have been reading have all been duets. So we wanted to wait until the latest duet was complete. And it is so good. It's so freaking hot. Anyway, so quick intro of who we are. You know us. We are the lkerSisters, me and Julie and Ron and Susie. And we're chatting with Sarah Bale, who she's my dark romance hookup. And I wait a little impatiently for each book that comes out just because I adore them and like to dive in right away. And I will say this right now, I was never a cliffhanger person. I would not read a cliffhanger until I read Sarah's books because I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait for them to be complete. So now I will read a Sarah Bale cliffhanger, but nobody else's.
Yay.
But Sarah, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you write, all the things.
I am a USA Today bestselling author from Oklahoma. I've lived here my whole life. I write dark romances. Sometimes they are why choose romances. Sometimes they're just MF romances. I've been writing probably forever, but professionally since 2013. And yeah, I like my books to make people feel things like emotionally, if that makes sense. And so the biggest compliment I can get is if somebody tells me that my books have made them cry.
Well, then you're getting lots of compliments today because I think you've made us all cry. So now I found you through Ron. Ron, I think it was right after the Hook books or the first one came out.
It was the motorcycles. I turned you on to her in
You're
the motorcycle
right.
books.
You're right. That's right. That was first. I thought Hook was first. No, you're right. It was The Devil's Regents was the first series. And Ron was like, read this, read it all. And I didn't actually jump into reading Sarah's books until Hook because, come on, because, life is insanity sometimes. Yeah. And then you sent me, I'm trying to remember if it was, which is the first one, Captive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Ron sent me Captive and said, you have to read this book. And I looked at the cover and I went, oh, I will read this book. And then she said, it's a cliffhanger. And I went, oh, maybe not. But it was like a couple weeks before the second one came out. Yes. So I was like, okay, well, I'll wait a couple weeks and I'll read something else in the meantime. And I just kept waiting for Hooked to come out. And then the minute Hooked came out, I dove right into Captive. And I think, did I message you, Sarah, at one point? And I was like, dude, what the, why? I think I messaged Ron also with the, why? So
yes.
That started my obsession. That started my deep dive. Julie, Ron, how did you find Sarah?
I think it was KLE hooked me up.
Oh, yes.
I think
you're right.
And I'm a dark romance, motorcycles, why choose kind of chick anyway. So all of those things fit my preferences. So it was an easy deep dive. And then I fell in love with the Devil Regents because, like, why wouldn't you? And the rest is history. I'm a super fan.
Thank you.
So we'll also mention who KLE is, just so that we all know who she is, but Catherine L. Evans, she is another author who is fantastic, who will also make you cry a whole lot.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
Well, and we had Kaylee on also. We did a
Yeah.
podcast with her and Daniel Ringaring a while ago. And yeah, she's another one that will tear your heart out and then stitch it back together and say, not sorry. Sorry, not
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
But so
she's the
Julie,
best. I love her so much.
oh yeah, her
No,
books are
I
Yes.
dubbed Sarah the queen of the killer cliffhanger in a
yes.
review, like one of the very first reviews I ever wrote for her. And I'm like, she makes it hurt so freaking good that you wait for the next book and you wait for the next book. So yeah, she's my cliffhanger queen. She sets the bar.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is for me, like I said, I'm not usually the cliffhangers, but I don't want to wait. The minute one comes out, I'm like, I'm on it. Now I know better. Don't wait. But Julie, how did you find Sarah?
Through our group chat, I think it was Ron and you talking about Captive and Hooked, and I still didn't jump in. And then I think Susie read it and she's like, what are you doing, making me cry? And I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then I read it and I'm like, making me cry. But
yeah. But I really like I like the bedtime stories, and I like how you transitioned from like the moderately not bad guys to the real villains, and that shift is just delicious.
Thank you.
Definitely. And so Susie, how did you find Sarah?
Ron and you in the
I was gonna
chat.
say I was gonna escape it this time. It wasn't me this time. Yeah, this is all on Ron. I'm usually the group enabler, but Ron is our TBR enabler this time in a big way. So thank you, Ron, because this has been an amazing
I almost
deep dive.
quit after the first book too, because I was like,
oh, she did, because she didn't like the twist.
no, it
I
was
was like, he was like my book boyfriend, and then all of a sudden he was dead. I was like, what just happened? I was like, what just happened? She killed him. I was like, that's it. I'm not going on. I'm not reading.
Yeah, that was it wasn't even like ripping my heart out. It was like reaching into my chest, twisting it, grabbing it, squeezing it. And then it was like, no, now you get to live with it. You get to keep it, but it's all mangled.
Michelle texted me. She got to that point. She texted me. She's like, what did you just do to me?
I did. Because, okay, you guys have to remember also, I didn't start reading romance until 2020. I am so new to this. And everything I had read up until then was all happy. It was all, everything's good. Like even the romantic suspense I read, the only people who met a demise were people who really deserved it. They were like the baddies of the baddies. And then it was like, what the, okay. Yeah. I grew up reading Stephen King and John Saul and Dean Koontz, and, stuff happens all the time, and classics. So stuff happens, but this was like, oh, this is, John's like, what's the matter? I mean, I remember him looking at me saying, is everything okay? And I went, no, everything is not okay. And he laughed at me. He's like, aren't you reading a book? And I was like, it's not just a book. But anyway.
I always like throwing twists like that in, because I feel like in real life, I mean, that's something that could very realistically happen, and it's not always perfect. And I think it's, especially in a dark romance, it's like the perfect place to show, like, how would she feel if that happened? And, how would it affect the others? And like, it was actually going to be a different character. And then I was talked down from that ledge because like my editor and like, Catherine, a whole bunch of people were like, I don't think people will forgive you if it's who my first choice was.
But now I need to know who was the first choice.
Okay,
are you allowed to tell us?
Yeah, I can tell you, it was going to be Smee.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's who it was going to be. And then everybody was like, no. And I was like, oh, well, maybe.
No, I licked that character so hard. No, you can't take Smee.
Yeah, I mean, that's who it was going to be, like, originally.
Okay.
And well, I totally can see that. I mean, like, in keeping with the whole Sarah of it all. I could totally see you doing it. I'm glad you didn't.
Thank you for not doing that. Thank you. And
Yes.
I do agree. And this is one of the things I do love about dark romance and the direction that you take with a lot of them, is that there are things that happen in your books that are unexpected, but they are so true to plot. It's that reality of it, like you said, where this, in a dark romance, things are not always, gumdrops and rainbows. And
Exactly.
that was an element of the book where it was like, this is relevant, this is necessary, this moves the plot forward. If it's gratuitous and doesn't move the plot forward, I'm gonna be angry. I was angry anyway, but on a different level. I was hurt. It was sad.
It was
But
yeah, it broke us.
it did.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
And it's
especially
all
like
on-
in that book. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, it made me want to go unalive the dudes that did it.
Yes.
Right.
Big time. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and in that book, like she finally gets back and she's kind of like finding her place, and he's like one of the people helping her, and they get these leads, and you're like, okay, everything's coming together, but then that really pushes things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Awesome.
does. It pushes the plot forward really fast too. Like there's an extra level of urgency. Aside from the original plot, it adds a very
Yeah.
big level of urgency to the plot. So it really does move it forward. So that's captive and hooked, which is amazing.
Mm.
And then from there, the whole bedtime stories started to evolve. And from bedtime stories came villainous tales, right? So they
Mhm.
build on each other. So I'm going to make a recommendation that if you're new to Sarah, that you read bedtime stories first, because Villainous Tales comes off of bedtime stories ish. Like it's a spin-off. The characters, they're still the
It's-
same characters show up.
It's like
Especially,
a shared
like-
world.
Yeah, exactly. Because in Touch and Crave, which is like the Snow White retelling, a lot of characters from the Villainous Tales are in Crave specifically.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that leads us to Villainous Tales, which is the series that we just finished reading, the first two books, Savage Sins and Savage Secrets. And I've been waiting for those two books for a bit. I don't remember the first time I messaged you and I was like, does he get a book? Does Jafar get a book? I was like, ooh. And then you put up the cover. And I think you broke me.
I love those covers.
These covers are stunning. Like there's so much in a cover, and we've talked about this before about what you put in a cover and what the impression it gives and why covers are so important. And people can say as much as they want to, oh, I read on my Kindle, I don't care about the cover. Yes, you do, because the cover is what catches your eye in an ad, when someone posts a picture of it on social media. Those covers are key. And I know this isn't in what we talked about originally, but I want to talk to us a little bit about the covers, why you chose them, where they're from, who they are. Talk about that a bit.
I knew I wanted like custom images. That's ever since I did the bedtime stories. All of the bedtime story covers, except for one, were custom images, and I just kind of like that it made them stand out. So when I was switching to Villainous Tales, I kind of had like a vision in mind. Like I knew I wanted it to just be like the men on the cover, and then since all the books in this series are duets, like the first cover kind of shows the guy in the beginning, like how he is, and then the second cover kind of shows how he feels after love. Like that's just kind of like what I envisioned. I love that cover. So like in the first one, he's like super cocky and like, just full of himself and still, beautiful to look at. And then in the second book, he's trying to get back everything he lost. And I feel like you can see that when you see the two books together.
Uh-huh. Are you pulling up the other one, Julie?
Yeah, but I have to do magic to get it to my phone so I can show you. So.
And I use Wander Photography for the first two books, and then for the next upcoming books, the Little Mermaid retelling, it's Michelle Lancaster is the photographer, which I love her photos. And then for books 5 and 6, I'm going back to Wander.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these are Wander images, and he's so incredibly talented.
Yes.
Oh my God. I love that.
So like when you see them like side by side, you can see like the first book, he's super cocky, and the second book, he's sad of what he did at the end of the first book.
And he should be.
Yes.
So he should be. So I had a thought and then the squirrels took it. I'm going to go back to my notes because maybe it'll jog my memory, but we're talking about covers and because there is a switch. So I love that in this duet, it's like his personality, his attitude, everything about it just kind of makes this flip. And where you left it at the end of the first one, I think we were all kind of like, oh my, okay. And then the second one picked up. It didn't pick up where I thought it was going to, for one.
Where did you think it was going to pick up at?
Like right away.
Right.
Yes. And it doesn't. It's a couple months later. Like, what is it? 3 months?
3 months,
Yeah.
I think.
3 months.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be like immediate. And then when it jumped in with the 3 months later, which was great because sometimes that time hop, that time leap is absolutely necessary for the plot. And it did, because it drops you right back in the thick of it. There is no delay in the action picking up, the intensity picking up, the angst picking up. It is like, there's no level. It's just like you come down from the first one, you're like, it's like the brakes at the top of the roller coaster. And then there's no way to recover. It's just immediate and it just takes back off again. And I think that was a brilliant idea to push it just that little bit. But yeah, I came in on the second one. It's like there was no lead up. It was bam right there. And I was like, okay, here we go. There is no recovery time. I read them when they first came out. So there's a break in between. Ron, you read them when they first came out, right? So there was a break in between.
Yes. Yep.
Julie, you back-to-backed them, right?
I had to hurry up and read them this weekend, and I am not a fast reader. My ADHD kicks in. I end up doing 20 other things, and I did not put these books down. I got them all done, and I started, I think, Friday night. So that's impressive for me.
Yeah, that means she neglected everything else except the reading and necessary tasks. And for you, when you went from book 1 to book 2, was it just like smooth right through? Did you?
I mean, it was, I'm just thankful that I didn't have to wait, but I think the way you did it allowed as a reader to feel her pain and her loss, and and then of course he comes in and he knows he's an idiot. He knows he totally screwed up, and now he's got to pay for a long time for it and worry. And so I think it was perfect.
Yeah, and that's like what I wanted, the first book, and I did it on purpose. Like, nobody expects a romance book to end like that. And so like whenever, he's like, leave or whatever, and she leaves, you would expect it to pick up where he's like, oh, I made a mistake, I should go get her. And then you don't expect it to be 3 months later, like where, she's had to live through this, and then not only live through it, then, know somebody's watching her, but then also her other little secret. And then on the flip side, he's keeping tabs on her. And so when she runs, then he's like, well, why did she run? Yeah.
That there was so much to it. It wasn't, just their loss. It was, the person that she was fearful of being hurt again from, and then the step monster. And there was a lot.
Yeah, that was a twist I didn't see coming. That was an added extra little whoa.
Exactly.
And intense. And let's not make it, this is dark romance. So if you are not a dark romance fan, I'm going to say read it anyway, because I think you should read everything anyway, but I know that it's not something that everybody's into. And some fairy tale retellings are, they're interesting, they're neat, they have a little bit of an edge to them. These are, I don't even want to call these retellings. It's like a complete reimagining of the entire world, and just turns everything on its head.
Yeah, I like that though. I think that it kind of in my mind it takes it back to the really darker roots that Grimm Tales had. You know,
Right.
if you read the originals, those are dark. I mean, that they're
Mhm.
children's stories is pretty scary because they're pretty twisted, and that you went back and reclaimed that element of it is brilliant. I mean, I love it, and I am a dark romance reader, so I appreciate that none of it seems gratuitous though. I mean, it's like all plot driven. It's dark as it needs to be, but not any darker than that. And it's every bit of angst is authentic.
Yes.
So I mean, I really appreciate that, and I read crazy dark stuff, and this is the way to do it right.
I agree.
But
and
I
I
don't
am a
think
big fan.
it's,
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't think it's crazy dark. What I think, and this is where, the trigger warnings would have to come in, because there is on-screen stuff that happens, but to me, it's not dark. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know.
It's not gratuitous.
And maybe
it's necessary.
maybe I'm just becoming used to stuff.
You're acclimating to the dark side. We have cookies.
Let's unalive 6 or 8 characters. They all deserve it.
But that's it. They deserve it. Or it's like plot
Oh,
driven.
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, we're rooting for him. Go kill him.
I know,
I know
right?
everybody after the first book was like, I can't wait to see how Drew gets hers, and
Yes.
other people, and yeah.
Yes. I'm right there with you. There were a bunch of them where I was like, I need something to happen to this ass because damn. I mean, there are just some really awful people who need their just desserts, and they got served, which is beautiful. So we have quotes, and we always have quotes. We always pick quotes, and the quotes I did pick 3. And they're all from Secrets because I read that one most recently. And they're all from different people because I do a lot of highlighting. And one of the ways I can tell if a book is really hitting me is either it's going to be completely covered in highlighting or there's going to be barely any. Because if there's barely any, I was so entrenched and enthralled in it that I didn't take the time to do a lot of highlighting, or everything hit so hard that I was constantly highlighting things. So there's a lot of highlighting in this one in certain spots because I'm like, I love that. I love that they said that. I love that they said that. I love that this happened. I love that that happened. And I'm just going to do one of them, and then we'll kind of go around and see what other people's quotes are. But the first one was, it's from Elliot. There's always been a magnetic pull between the two of us, but now it's like it's been amplified. To know that he sees me as an equal is a lot. And to me, that was a lot because in mafia romance, we know they are not female friendly. Women are not seen as equals. They are not seen as pillars. They are not put on pedestals. They are quite often property, and that is how they are treated. And that she makes the recognition and that she says it was like, yeah, that's the kind of dark I want. That's the power that I want. So Susie, you had a good one. I like yours.
Oh, they judge people all right, but do it with a smile on their face as they say, bless your heart. When I read that, I was like, well, there goes my saying. I'm gonna start smiling and telling people to bless their heart.
Well, if you grew up in the South, you'd be doing that anyway, because yeah, someone says bless your heart, that is not a compliment. They do not wish you well. But I love that was in there. When Susie pulled that out, I was like, the smile on your face as they say it. I was like, that is so perfect too. I love it. Julie, you had a couple.
I did, but they're kind of related, even though they're separate points in the book. But Little Mouse, are you aiming for my capo's spot? Because she's helping how to catch them. And they listen to her, which is huge. You know, women know their shit. They should listen to us more often.
Yeah, they
And
should.
then later he goes, forget what I said about going after Razul's spot. I think you're after mine. I only went to co-rule, husband. Co-rule? That's something I will discuss.
Yeah, that was my favorite quote. And
I'm sorry.
No. I'm like, it's there. It's good. I'm happy with it. But I think that throughout all of the books, Sarah does a really good job of not dumbing down the female characters. I mean, all of these women are at their hearts tough women, and they go through hard stuff, and they go through the angst that everybody feels, you know, when life goes crazy. But ultimately, they rule the world, and they know it. They just have to coax the guys along, and I love that. I love that.
And sometimes I think it's also the guys pulling out from inside what they know is there, but the women have either been trained not to express or beaten down into not seeing it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Which I think was a lot with Ellie. I really liked the portrayal of Ellie as in the first book. I think it built up a lot of sympathy for her past and what she'd been through. It laid a really beautiful foundation and groundwork for who she became later and why. But I don't think she would have gotten what she had if she had always been the strong one.
Or if she hadn't been through what she went through. And, you know, of course, when she's back in Kansas and she has the secret, and, you know, that secret will make you do just about anything.
Yes, it will.
One of my favorite quotes from the book. I mean, I have like a ton, but from Secrets, it was where, you know, Jafar shows up to the bar, and, you know, Swag is there, and, you know, Swag keeps calling her princess, and he's like, call her princess one more time and see what happens. And I love that quote because I think, you know, he's walking into the situation and he's seeing like, oh crap, you know, like, am I too late?
And you know what? He needed to see that.
Yeah.
I think we kind of all fell in love with Swag. I'm glad you brought him up. I think
we all fell in love with him.
Susie messaged me right after, like, I think it was right after he came on, and, you know, she's reading and she starts messaging me immediately about Swag. And I think you asked me, you're like, okay, I think the Swag needs a book, right? I think that was the first thing we were talking about was, okay, who's Swag? Where'd he come from? He needs a book. And yeah, I kind of fell in love with Swag too. I think that was another message I sent you.
The struggle was so hard with him because, like, I wanted to show, you know, like her running and then, you know, trying to like live and then it not always working. And then when it finally starts to work, you know, I wanted her to have like someone similar to Jafar, but different, and, you know, showing her like how it could be. And the struggle was real, not making him the main character. Like,
I was wondering
him.
where you were going. I was wondering where you were going with it. I'm like, I didn't think this was a white shoes. And
yeah,
I don't think that's going to work. Swag and Jafar. I don't think that's going to be a thing, but damn. I mean,
and people have had like feelings like with even how far their relationship went, you know, they're like, oh, that's too far. And I'm like, I think it was far enough. I think she needed, you know, to happen.
She needed to feel.
Yeah. And yell out the wrong name.
That was so brilliant, because for me it was she's allowed to be her own person and she's allowed to have these experiences and we want her to, and at the same time it just showed the depth of where her heart really was. But
and man, also it was broke like Swag's heart.
But I broke. Oh, I know. I broke for him. I'm like, oh no.
It was a total slap. I felt like I had been slapped in the face for him. I was like, oh, poor Swag. Like,
Well,
that's
and like
okay.
he's
I'll
like
hug
had
him.
this day, like where he's like went to go buy the baby furniture and he's like planning on knocking down walls and he finally thinks he's getting what he wants and then that happens to him.
He was planning their future, not his
Yeah.
future. He
Yes.
was planning their future. There's Ron.
Can you hear me
Are
now?
we? Oh, yes, we do. Are we allowed to ask who's Swag gonna get? Is it the 20-year-old?
Yeah. Jolie.
I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay, that
one of
just
my
made me
cats
really
just snuck
excited.
in here.
It's funny, I went to our group chat because I'm like, sometimes it's nice to go back and see like live reactions. And what Susie wrote was Swag was heart emoji, like I heart emoji.
Uh-huh.
She definitely felt it. I see
Yes.
the tail.
Yeah, she snuck in. I don't know where she came from.
That's okay. Well, there's all the wonderful pictures from Zoom of like, people's cats' butts in the camera and everything. And it's like, that is such a Zoom.
Oh, she's
Cat
about to walk
thing.
on the keyboard.
Of course she is.
So, in the book how Jafar has a little black cat. This is the
Yes.
inspiration.
Oh,
And I love that piece of it too, because
Yeah.
that showed his marshmallow side,
yes,
It
does. That he had this cat because it was the rescue, right? And he
Yep.
kept it. And she's such a
got
sweet
down
little
on
cat.
his knees, digging, trying to get to this cat in his Armani suit or whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's a
He's got some
marshmallow.
humanity in there. He is a marshmallow. That's so true. In fact, that's one of my other quotes was from Jafar was, I need you to stay pure, sweet girl. I need you to be the goodness that soothes my soul. And that he recognized that element of her for him, that the light and the darkness type of thing. But he has a soul. Because a lot of times, some of these guys, you have to wonder, there's not a whole lot of humanity in there, is there?
Mhm.
But he really did. And then my other quote was real quick, and then we're going to ask more questions, was from Razul, who turned out to be this little bit of a sleeper character that was kind of on the outside, but really became a driving force a little bit for some of the stuff that happened. And, I always go back to the original, the Disney Aladdin. Okay, we all go back there, right? And that's how we know Jafar and Razul. And I was like, I remember Razul from from the movie. He's this little character, but said, I know I said Ellie didn't belong in our world, but I was wrong. I think she's exactly what this world needs. And I love the resonance of him recognizing that, because he was a big reason why book 2 had to happen.
I'm just really glad that Jafar didn't send a bullet through his brain. I would have
Mhm.
been a little broken.
Uh-huh.
Yep. I learned my lesson. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I mean, he is such an integral part of the story. I mean, he's the support for Jafar, but he was also, he had a love and affection for
yeah.
Ellie, not in the sexual way, but just she meant something to him, which was also why he wanted her away. He didn't want her harmed.
Mhm.
Yep.
So
Oh yeah. Ron, did you have another quote?
No, I didn't.
Okay, it was the other one?
I was like neck deep in reading, and I didn't highlight. I thought I highlighted in sins, but my phone app ate my quotes.
Oh no.
So I'm gonna have to go back and Kindle quote them, because I can't with the full versions, because on the ARCs I couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I know we had some other questions. Julie, we're going to start with yours.
what is your favorite scene or part in Savage Sins or Secrets, either one?
In Sins, I would say it was the foot rub scene. I just love that because that's the first time that you kind of see like his interest in her, and also it's kind of funny because she's having like all these thoughts and like just over analyzing everything. And then, you know, later he's like, I knew whose foot I had, you know. And I think that's like a fun way for there to show that there's interest, you know, like he knew what he was doing. And then in Secrets, anytime he's groveling to get back in her good graces, you know, like I just love, you know, like what he has to go through to show that like he wants her back.
Mm-hmm. I love that too. Susie, Susie was on mute for a while because she said Kenzie was singing. Do you want to come off mute?
Yeah.
For your question.
How does Savage Sins or Secrets work into your other books?
So all of my books are connected in one way or another. Like it's all like same universe. Even like my, I know I had mentioned earlier before we started that I used to write like post-apocalyptic stuff. Even those books are like tie into the whole universe of things. So in the Villainous Tale specifically, it most directly ties into the bedtime stories. But in this series, I also have set up for a spin-off to my Devil's Region series.
With swag.
Yay!
How many books is he getting?
He's getting 3.
I'm a little
3
overly
books.
giddy about
3,
that.
so that means that there's going to be cliffhangers.
Yes.
That
Yes.
means we're going to need tissues.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because he's a very jaded soul.
He is now. Wow, that
He
poor
is,
guy. Oh, poor swag. Ron, you had a question.
So what was the most difficult part to write from the Secrets?
In Secrets, it was probably, which is kind of weird, was probably just making Swag not the main character. And that was like really hard to do. You know, in Sins, it would have been like when Ellie's attacked and then the aftermath, you know, like that was, it's always hard to like get into like the headspace of, you know, scenes like that and making sure you do it like properly and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think you did a really great job without making it over the top triggering.
Right.
I mean, because that in the scene in Sins where Ellie gets attacked is like it could have been a dumpster fire. I mean,
yeah.
And you navigated it in a way that made it validating for people who have been in those situations. And that seems so counterintuitive to dark romance. I mean, dark romance has a tendency to want to just slash and burn, and you handled it so elegantly that the horror translated without it being personified. And I think that for me, that was, I was like, wow, that could have been really, really bad, but it was really, really bad, but I didn't take it on.
But I almost think that her numbness, because to me, she was numb. Like she didn't react.
Right.
She was numb, and that numbness actually made it more, I don't know, deep. I felt it more because she was so withdrawn and in herself.
Well, like the part like where, you know, she's like taking the shower, you know, and she like has the water as hot as it'll go, and like, you know, nothing's helping her, you know, like process what happened. Yeah. And then, you know, she resorts to like the other thing that she does. And, you know, I feel like those are like very, you know, normal responses for somebody that's their inclination to do. Like if that's their emotional response to, or, you know, physical response to emotional response, then yeah.
And it was neither glorified nor trivialized, which was great because it didn't go, a lot of times those situations can go one way or the other. And I thought it was handled with care and within the scene itself and within the context of the book, it was handled perfectly for what would be expected. You know, it wasn't brushed under the rug. There was no trivialization of it, but it also wasn't gratuitous.
In your face. Yeah.
Yes,
it was.
exactly.
I don't think it was traumatizing to the reader. I think that it ticked all the boxes in terms of being honoring of that experience, because not all assault in in any area of romance is handled well. But I think that this specifically was handled in a way that if you'd been in that situation, that you felt seen and validated, but not re-traumatized.
That was
Yeah,
it.
like I received, I mean, a ton of messages from, readers after that. And, they shared like experiences and, would talk about, like the scene at the hospital, they related with it because they went through something similar, or on the opposite end, that they wish their hospital, would have had a program like that. And, and what I said in the book about, safe nurses or sane nurses, because they're called both, being in shortages is so true. Like if you're in a big city, the chances of them having a team are higher, but like, smaller towns, they don't necessarily have it.
Yep.
Yeah.
20 years ago, I was on our victim response team for our town. And if you got anybody watching this, if you've got a couple extra hours a week or whatever, please check in with your victims assistance programs in your communities, because you absolutely are needed.
Yeah, and I love that readers reached out to you also, because that also for me says something about this community itself, of the recognition of the connection of this is something that hit me. This is something that that resonated with me. Thank you for handling it this way, because a lot of times we tend to lash out when we're angry, but we don't tend to touch base when something touches us and makes us feel seen. And that, I think, one, for the indie romance community, the fact that readers feel comfortable reaching out to an author to say something to begin with is huge.
Yes.
Because I would never think about reaching out to, Nora Roberts or Stephen King. You just don't. But knowing that line is open there, and that you put that social element of it in there, because you don't often hear about the programs.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
I had never heard of it. And it is just based on what you wrote. I want there to be that for every single hospital. There needs to be that for every single hospital.
Yeah.
There has to be an advocate that's there for them and them alone.
And to learn about it in a romance novel, in a dark romance novel, how amazing is that? Because it's not something I think that people expect.
No.
So that was pretty incredible for me to read that element, because the depth that you went into it with that was what I think made it realistic. You felt the trauma for Ellie, but it didn't become that gratuitous trauma to yourself, and then having that, this is what they did and it's not always available and this is why it should be, made it even more real. And it's almost like a call to action for readers, which is pretty amazing, because we don't often see that in books.
Yeah, because I had people like reach out, even asking if that was, like the safe nurse or sane nurse was like a real thing. And I'm like, yeah, it is a real thing, and it varies from, cities, what it's called. And, you can, look and see, like the programs that are available or not available, and it should be available.
It should. And okay, so
for men and women.
Yeah. And I'm going to key my next question and kind of off of that, of you, obviously, this is something that's on your radar. And we don't often write things from our life into our books. Sometimes it gets in there and sometimes it doesn't. But how have your life experiences, things that you know about your work experience, whatever, how does that influence when you're writing your stories, your characters, the plots, the tale?
It's a different cat too. Well, obviously, like working in a hospital, I've worked in a hospital for 20 years in various departments. And, I work in a smaller, it used to be physician-owned hospital. And, just talking to different people and getting to see their experiences, you pick up things. And, with us being a smaller hospital in the past, like in Ellie's situation with her assault, I've seen people come through and, have seen the resources or lack of resources that we've had to offer. And in general, and I feel like anybody that's in healthcare, like if you read a book about healthcare and it's not accurate, you notice, and so I always try to like make it accurate. And like I'm a pharmacy technician in my day job, and so I always try to keep that in mind if I'm writing anything about like medicine. Like I had started to write something in Devious Stills, and I was like, she took a handful of ibuprofen, and then I was like, well, I'm not going to say that, because you wouldn't really want to take a handful. You'd want to take what it says, like 2 or 3 tabs, so I like had to change it.
Yeah.
I'm also obviously a curvy girl, and so that affects my writing. In Sins and Secrets, a lot of people had commented that some of the things said to Ellie, they're like, oh, if somebody said that to me, I wouldn't stand for it. And some of the things that I used are things that people have said to me, like the scene like where they're at the bar, and Jasmine's like, oh, I can't eat anything here, and she's like, but I'm sure you can eat here. Like, I've had that said to me before. And so I always try to like bring in like the real life aspect. And I also have noticed that I have a trend of making my main characters have lost a parent or both parents. And my mom passed away when I was 9, and so even though I had a really happy childhood, that definitely left an impact, because I know what that loss feels like. And a lot of people don't know, but if you know,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I agree. And it becomes more authentic. When you read something, you could tell this is coming from their life. This is something that's authentic. The voice rings true. It doesn't have the not saying that skinny women can't write curvy girls.
Oh yeah, for
but
sure.
there is a different element, like you said, of nobody would say something like that. Oh, yes, they do. Yeah, like asking if you can shop in the same store.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do say things, and it does stick, and it resonates when you write it as this authentic truth of how this character feels. So yeah, it's I was trying to remember. Okay, see, my mind went whoop, there we go. Melanie Harlow, when she wrote the most recent one, the heroine is a curvy girl. And she said, I'm just kind of going off on the curvy girl thing for a second. She said she spoke to a number of different people because she didn't feel it was in her wheelhouse to write that kind of a character, because she hadn't lived those experiences. And that's kind of a kudos thing for me, of recognizing that it's not your thing. So you should reach out to someone whose it is.
Yeah.
Because the voice will be way more truthful when you have that information. And I really felt Ellie's the pain, the insecurity, but then the minute that switch flipped, also it was like, there she is. It was also that recognition of who's in your corner, what have they said to you, what have they done to show you how they feel about you, not just the gratuitous platitudes of oh, but you have a wonderful smile. It's so much deeper than that, of such a great sense of humor.
And I always felt like it was really important, like in both books, Jafar not once ever says anything about her size. He's never like, she's too big, she's she needs to lose weight. He not once ever says that. And I think that says a lot too, that people need to see in books that like some men like curvy girls.
But you also didn't make it a big deal like the other way either.
Right.
Like it wasn't it didn't all of a sudden become this kink.
Yes.
And sometimes that's how that's handled, is all of a sudden that the main character is objectifying the act, and you don't do that. And I think that-that's probably because we're kindred, you just don't do what you wouldn't want done to yourself.
Right.
So.
Well, like after my mom passed away, my grandma helped raise us, and she was a Depression era child. She was raised in the 20s, and so her outtake on life was sometimes harsh, and so she would say things out of love, but sometimes it would come across like, do you really need to eat that and stuff. And so I feel like sometimes people can be okay in their bodies, but it's the people around them that aren't okay with it. And so I feel like it was important to show, like, yeah, she knew she was curvy, but you know, for the most part, like, I think she even has a line where she's like, her weight doesn't even come into play until she's back in New York, like around Jasmine. And I think that's, you know, big, because like when she's living her day-to-day life, her weight is not a thing. It's just, you know, part of who she is.
Oh, and then she's in that crowd, she's in that environment where appearance and the expectation of perfection and how they define perfection becomes a big part of who she is. And that is, that difference is key. So yeah, but thank you for writing that in too, because like I said, it comes across as that authentic voice, and it's nice to read that.
Thank you.
It really is. So, oh yeah, so what's next? So I know we talked about this a little bit, and I honestly can't remember how much we talked about before we actually started and since. So tell us what's coming next.
So the next 2 books are the Little Mermaid retelling, and it's Devious Dills and Devious Desires. And then after that, it's going to be the Frozen retelling. I just knocked a whole bunch of stuff off my desk. It's the Frozen retelling, and Devious Dills actually comes out first, but I've been working more on Vicious Vows, just because that's just where my headspace is right now.
Didn't you do that with Savage Sins also?
I did. Yeah, I did. And I was actually, what was I working on? I can't remember. I do it a lot. I usually have multiple projects going on. I get bored sometimes, or, you know, like sometimes I put pressure on myself, even if it's silly. You know, which I've kind of done with Devious Dills, but I know it'll come around and work out. It usually does.
I think she said she was working on swag, and it just wasn't, it needed something, and you're like, I'm just going to shelve it for a second, you know, and then you went into Secrets and Sin, and it's like, that's where that's going.
Yeah, because after the bedtime stories, I kind of was trying to do like a palette cleanse, and I was like, I've kind of had this idea about doing the spinoff on the Devil's Regents, and, you know, a swag just kind of appeared to me, and I could just see, you know, him and all his swagger. And I was writing it, and I was like, there is something missing. You know, I feel like he has all this angst, but I don't know where it's coming from. And so then I was like, well, you know, I want to do another fairy tale retelling. And, you know, I knew a long time ago I wanted to do an Aladdin retelling, but I feel like on a lot of Aladdin retellings, it's usually like Jafar and Jasmine, like that's just kind of like the expected. And then I was like, well, how can I make that unexpected? And then I was like, what if Cinderella was in there? And anyways, and then, you know, it did lead into, you know, swag showing up again. And then I was like, okay, well, this is definitely where he gets his angst from, you know, so that definitely tied in and helped itself out.
I loved that. I loved the insta love that he had for her. It was just like hard eyes.
Yes.
And jumped in with 2 feet, like no hesitations, no holdbacks, nothing. It's just like he was right there right away. Is his story going to be like that? Is it going to be insta love, or is he going to really have to work his way through it?
Well, he's in the first book, he's definitely was already going through things, which now I know what it is, and so it's going to take him a minute.
Okay, we'll wait for that.
I would say now he's guarded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
guy.
I would be. His heart's broken. It's in pieces.
Yeah.
He's been through some shit.
There's a part of him that kind of hopes, you know, maybe she'll come back. And, you know, I feel like he has to go through things and, you know, see things before he can move on.
Poor swag.
I agree.
We'll definitely embrace him and tell him it'll all be okay. Trust Sarah. It'll all be okay. The covers, wow. So we always love your covers, but knowing the little sneak peek, the little hints of swag, I'm a very happy person. A happy girl.
I am too, and I love working with Ian. You know, like he's one of my favorite cover models that I've ever worked with. So
he just seems like a stellar human.
Yeah,
he is.
And
You
that
know,
was just like
just
random, like a random, I saw a photographer's TikTok about him, and I messaged her and I was like, hey, do you ever sell book covers? And she's like, no, not really. And then a few months later, she messaged me back and she's like, surprise. And
oh
so that's just kind of,
wow,
yeah, that's kind of how that happens.
She's
You know,
like, oh, I can make some money.
right? You can
and
buy more Dunkin'.
yeah. And it was funny because before I had watched her TikToks about their photo shoot, I had randomly saw his Captain America cosplay. And
Oh,
so I had watched him before, and then when I realized it was the same person, I was like, well, this is just, fate.
I will agree. Yeah, that one was one that hooked me right away too. That cosplay. See now, Julie, we're gonna have to find that on TikTok and put that
I have that
share
one
that.
saved. I'll
Do
share
you
with
have
you
it
guys.
saved?
Thank you.
I do.
Because otherwise I have to go on a search.
I have it saved. I'll share it with you guys.
Susie is our TikTok queen. She finds all the best things. She shares all the links and the goodies. So of course you have that one saved. You're smart. I don't save things. I keep forgetting that you can do that, but I just keep going back to his TikTok and flipping through because one, he cracks me up, and he's pretty nice to look at too. So all right, so so we've got Devious, and we've got Swag, and we've got there's one in between there.
The Frozen retelling.
Frozen, thank you.
Frozen.
That's it, right, which I'm really excited about too. All right, so speed round. We're just going to throw random questions at you. All right, just answer right off. No thinking, just answer right off the top of your head. Julie, we're starting with you.
Flip-flops or heels?
Flip-flops.
Dogs or cats?
Cats, as you
Yeah,
can tell.
clearly. Beachfront house or mountain cabin?
Cabin.
Chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin?
Oatmeal raisin.
Really?
Rom-com or romantic suspense?
Suspense.
Read the book or watch the movie?
Read the book.
City or country?
Country.
Mood reader or planned TBR?
Mood reader.
Coffee or tea?
Ooh, neither.
Are you a soda drinker?
I'm
Are you
a
a
Diet
caffeine
Coke
person?
girl.
Okay,
Yeah,
yep.
Diet Coke.
Uh-huh.
Kindle or paperback?
Oh, I love paperbacks more, but I read more on my Kindle. I mean, you can see my office behind me. I love paperbacks.
I'm a little
Beer,
jealous.
beer or wine?
Wine.
And then toilet paper, over or under?
Over.
All right, she's not a
Yeah.
sociopath. That was the discussion this morning, was toilet paper.
Oh, no.
Over or under? I think we're all
Always
agreed on
over.
over. Always over, right? Yes. So see, that was painless, right?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
so much.
Thank
This
you
was
for your
great.
patience. Because it
Had
was
fun.
I apologize. I honestly had it on my book on the wrong time.
Oh no. And then the
I
time
got-
changed.
My phone chimed and I was actually taking a nap because I was preparing to do it later. I'm like, oh, shit. And the phone wouldn't work. Then nothing would work. Zoom must have had an update or something. It was really kind of weird. Nothing worked.
Yeah, I've noticed the technology recently. It's like, why is that not it worked 20 minutes ago.
Exactly.
Why now is it choosing to be? Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I think the time change, I don't know why I try not to plan anything on a day where there's a time change, but I think I completely ignored the fact that there was a time change because I completely forgot about it until like 2 days ago. Somebody mentioned it and I went, that's this weekend?
Well, I remembered it this morning when my phone said one thing and the clock on my stove said something different. I'm like,
what?
Yeah. Yeah. And then we had the discussion of we're in savings time more than we're in standard time. So it's not really standard anymore because it's not as much as savings. It's like, we just need to get rid of it. So
Yes,
thank
I
you
agree.
for accommodating this crazy busy schedule because we know that you're crazy busy writing and you have a day job and family and everything else. So we really appreciate you joining us for this. And if anybody hasn't read any of the books, where do they start?
My personal favorite is the Devil's Regions. I always tell people to start with Her Saviors, you know, because even some of those characters like trickle in other places. But if you're just looking for the fairy tale retellings, then definitely start with the bedtime stories. And the first book is Captive.
Excellent.
And it's a Peter Pan retelling.
It is a reimagining. There is no retelling that story.
Yeah.
It flips it on its ass, and it is wonderful. So thank you so very much for joining us, for putting up with all of the craziness of the technology and everything else, and the questions all over the place, the brain squirrels. I can't wait for the next one. I'm seriously looking forward to it. So as soon as you want to send that to my Kindle, I'll be happy to read it.
I'll do it.
So Stalker Sisters, thank you guys for
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Bye guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.